Hey, you know what? If the playoffs started right now, these are your first-round matchups in the AFC. We're in the stretch drive, so it's time to give you a look at the current playoff pictures in both conferences. We're going to show you who can move in and who can move out this week, which teams are safe, even if they lose, and we'll break down all the bubble teams. But check out these first-round matchups. Broncos-Ravens, they played a great game in 2012. The Ravens, of course, used that as a springboard to winning the Super Bowl. And how about a playoff rematch from last year, the Chiefs and the Texans? I'm sitting here with Dan Hanzus, the handsome one. Dan, this was one of the greatest playoff games of all time, except not at all.
Yeah, the idea of this being the sell, that we could get a rematch, that would turn people off of the NFL forever. You got to get the Texans out of the picture entirely. I might take it into my own hands if the teams can't figure it out.
What was the most dramatic moment? When Niall Davis hit the 40 on the opening kickoff return, or when he hit like the 20? When were you really on
You know
pins
what?
and needles?
It's funny because I'm going to say the 30. When he hit the 30,
Yeah.
That was my favorite part.
You always go rogue,
Yeah.
always. Hey, let's take a look right now at what some NFC matchups would be. You see Dallas and Seattle. Dan would have the bye. Tampa Bay, Detroit would be one matchup, and Giants-Falcons would be the other. And what's interesting, Tampa Bay and Detroit, if you're thinking they had this long playoff history, they don't. They did play in 97. Giants and Falcons, however, they played a few years ago when the Giants won the Super Bowl. Do you remember this game at all?
I believe it was 27-2.
24-2.
24-2, which
Very
is
good.
not going to happen again if these two teams meet.
Who wins? Who would win?
I think Atlanta would win, and I think Atlanta would put at least 30 points on the board. That's how they're built to win now.
So Giants, non-30-point scoring offense.
I'm not even sure the Giants are going to make the playoffs, Elliot.
Yeah, it's well, on that note, let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture, and we'll look at some bubble teams. You just mentioned the New York Giants. Right now, Dan, they would be in the fifth spot. You see Tampa Bay, we just talked about, would be in the sixth spot. You look at the in the hunt teams, and the only team out of this group that could actually make it into the playoff picture is the Washington Redskins, at least for this week.
Right.
You know, the Redskins, they went to Dallas on Thanksgiving on a short week. Then they go out to the desert to play a very motivated Cardinals team. I don't think we should downtick the Redskins too much for the losses.
I don't think so either. I mean, you'd like to see them finish one of those games, close one of those games out. But still, like the Falcons, I like watching the Redskins because they put up a ton of points. They're explosive, and there are no perfect teams in the NFC or the AFC for that matter. So if you can score some points, you have a chance to do damage in the playoffs.
I like Jamison Crowder, man. I think that guy can play. All right, let's talk about another team that we briefly mentioned, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, last year, Dan, they started 6-6. We got all hot and bothered about them, and then they lost to Chicago, the Saints, and the Rams in successive weeks. Do you think that happens this year?
I don't think so, although I do remember the speech that Jameis Winston gave when they got to 6-6, and he hugged Lovie Smith, and it was such a happy scene, and then they just never won again. But I think they're a different team this year. I think they're going to score points. I think they're going to get some stops on D. I think they have a shot, Tampa, this year.
By the way, everyone, that's Dan Hanzus, and I'm Elliot. I don't even know if I introduced ourselves. But
You did. You did a nice job.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Can I introduce you to the Atlanta Falcons, who are not going to plummet this year like they did last year? You know, they started, 6-1, finished
nice.
8-8. This year, you look at the matchups here. At L.A., home for the Niners. At Carolina, home for the Saints. I don't think we're going to see that swoon.
No. This is a totally different team. And they are far away from the Hard Knocks team from a couple of years ago, the team that got beat by the Giants in the playoffs. This is a new Falcons. You know what? 7-5, though. They got to be careful here. I mean, they've let some games get away, and right now they're hovering on where they could get picked off. They got to be careful. They got to win some games here.
What's better, the Falcons' playoff chances or Brian Cox sound bites?
Oh, Brian Cox, one of the great Hard Knocks MVPs of all time. I can still see him chomping on that cigar.
There you go. Well, who's going to be chomping on the cigar at the end of the playoff tournament in the AFC? Some people think the Raiders, some people think the Patriots. Look, the Ravens are boasting the top defense in the league, but when you look at the bubble teams, the Dolphins just got whooped by that Ravens defense. The Colts put a whooping on your New York Jets. What did you make of that game for the Indianapolis Colts, and what do you think about their playoff viability?
I think the little Giants, before Rick Moranis took over, could have beat the Jets on Monday night. That's how bad the Jets are right now. But the Colts, they're starting to play better, and Andrew Luck is healthy and looks like Andrew Luck. And in that back end of the playoff picture and in that AFC South, I like the idea of having Andrew Luck on my team when he's at 100%.
Rick Moranis was in the non-bad Ghostbusters, right?
He was in both, actually.
Was he in both?
Yeah.
Oh, that's because I didn't see.
More prominent role in one, perhaps.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
All right, Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, I think everybody realizes the talent on offense, Dan, but you worry about the defense. The one X factor in all of this discussion, I don't care what conference we're talking about, is teams avoided Le'Veon Bell the last two postseasons. They wouldn't have that benefit this year. Do you think Pittsburgh gets in, first of all?
I think they do. I mean, they're a weird team, though, aren't they? Because just when you start to trust them and believe in them, they lay one of those eggs. They've done it 3 times this year. So I'd be a little concerned if I'm a Steelers fan about getting overconfident. But I do think they're a team that deserves to be in the playoffs. And a team, if they get hot with Le'Veon Bell, can win the whole thing in the AFC.
They've looked terrible on the road. They play Buffalo this weekend. One of the games, they looked really bad. Although the final score didn't show it, they looked terrible against the Baltimore Ravens. I think they had 2 first downs going into the fourth quarter. And I'm telling you, if there's an underrated storyline in the league this year, I would say it's the Ravens defense. Yeah, like take the game they lost to Dallas. Yeah, Zeke Elliott had a big game. It took him about 25, 26 carries to get there. They tackle, they get after the pass rusher, after the passer, and then you get the big plays on defense like Eric Weddle there. Lardarius Webb had a red zone pick. I kind of like this team.
I think on our award-winning Around the NFL podcast, I remember saying before, I got a lot wrong this year. But before the season, I said, keep an eye on the Ravens because John Harbaugh is the most underrated coach in the league this side of Andy Reid. And that team's going to be ready. And here they are playing great defense. Joe Flacco needs to be better, though. I know he was good this past week, but if he's not making that paycheck or close to it, they don't have a chance. They need better quarterback play because they don't have a running game.
Pittsburgh, Baltimore, who wins AFC North?
Great question. I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Going with the Steelers there. All right, hey, you can check out your favorite team or just other teams because you're a Jets fan and you know you're going to be home in January.
So many choices.
Yeah, NFL.com/playoffs.